Hi, Tia. We're back with a new RegInt episode, right? No, you're muted, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. Now it should work, right?
Now it should work. It's
Okay,
great. We
perfect.
have experienced some technical difficulties, and I still don't know whether our it seems to be working. LinkedIn seems to be working, even though it blocked us from since this morning. But now I can see some movement there. Cool. Yeah, welcome back for our new episode of RegInt, and we're gonna have a lot to talk about. Unmasking AI, faces behind the code. Tia, what does it mean?
Well, what does it mean? It means that we are going to try to wrap our minds around the whole privacy issue surrounding these models and the vast amounts of data that they train on, which happen to be also protected by privacy laws. Faces behind the code, faces in the code. We can maybe discuss whether they are behind or in it. And probably the answer to that question is the most important one.
True that. Yeah, so this episode is number 6. If we count the first one in, that is us, that's Tia, an IP and IT and data protection expert. Me, myself, and I am a lawyer here at Spirit Legal. And this is our passion. We're doing this not for commercial reasons. We only want to know more and read more and learn more about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and everything that it's connected to. And it was by chance that this is currently a hot topic, right?
Yeah. And also, since we are reading so much, we might as well also do something with it.
Yeah, sharing information is like what made the internet big, that and file sharing. Yeah, that's our website where you can find all the links. It's Linktree RegInt, and you can find all the previous or most previous episodes there. All of them should be stored on either the LinkedIn Live events on our page or in the YouTube Live part. The next episode, we still don't have a title for that, but we figured out a date. It will be October 19th in 2023. Tia will be traveling at the time. Where are you going?
I'm going to the US and then Mexico. And Peter is going to have to figure it out without me.
That's gonna be great. I mean, safe travels there. You know what I think about this trip, but it's gonna be definitely great. And we will have to live without you for at least one episode, which is also okay. And we will be back together online and live in mid-November, something like that. I guess at the current pace of AI developments, there won't be happening that much during those 2 months, right? Yeah,
No,
nothing worth talking about. Great. Cool. I'm gonna hand it over to you, the mic and the floor, and the stage is yours.
thank you. So the thing that bothers me the most about the whole AI revolution, one of the things that bothers me the most about the whole AI revolution issues, blah, blah, is that we kind of appear to all be waiting for the oh shit moment, even though, of course, there are people warning about a lot of the issues relatively early on. And while these are still, at least to a certain extent, dealable with or resolvable, but no, we want to wait till the oh shit moment. We are waiting for it with generative AI, and we are waiting for it with a couple of other texts that are all going to be featured in today's rant, where we are still miles away from this moment. Arguably, also for generative AI, I don't think we're there yet, but hey, at least we are vigorously discussing the issue and still fighting what should we do with it. And I'm going to start off with this super interesting interview of ChatGPT. Yes, ChatGPT got interviewed. by a Guardian journalist. Aside from the fact that the article also engages in an act of dangerous anthropomorphization, it also illustrates quite well, actually, why we can never teach LLMs what copyright is or how not to violate it. And while this journalist struggled to treat her interviewee as any regular person that she would interview otherwise, she did really try though. The shit with anthropomorphization is kind of hitting the fan, pardon my French, on other more scientific fronts as well. Now, I, for one, am trying really hard to explain to people that using human brains as an inspiration for developing the technology does not make the technology human. Furthermore, anthropomorphizing their intentions, so intentions of the models and their actions, is kind of a fruitless pursuit towards generating kind of understanding that we naturally have for how humans operate, that help us navigate the world. And yeah, I'm trying very hard to put that point across, and then I encounter stuff like this. Now, as much as I'm all for a field of research that, quote, aims to identify behavioral patterns, emergent abilities, and mechanisms of decision making and reasoning in LLMs, comparing and treating the models as participants in psychology experiments is something I cannot stand for. Please, people, feel free to disagree, but I think we have a long way ahead of us in learning how to treat other humans as humans. When we have that settled, we can talk about machines. And I encountered this novel field of research, so machine psychology, strangely enough, in an article written by the same guy, where he ponders if LLMs can intentionally deceive people. I mean, yes, of course, you can jailbreak them into doing so, but they're kind of still missing one crucial component necessary to deceive someone. There's this thing called intent. You kind of should have to want to get something out of the action, and not just be jailbreak to do it, or just hallucinate your way to it by accident. Um, but anyhow, since we all like to be proven right, I'm also going to mention this article. Peter is going to tell you a bit more about it afterwards. Um, it's basically a very well written article by a professor at the School of Computing and AI. And the article supports my opinion fully. So maybe don't even contact me if you disagree. Please talk directly to higher and more expert instances. Thank you. Oh, and yeah, well, one other thing. Thanks, Peter, by the way, for letting me be borderline politically incorrect in this show to prove my, or well, in this case, Gary Marcus's point. Reasoning goes kind of hand in hand with understanding. Machines don't understand a lot of things. Yeah, I'm gonna end it there. Over and out and over to some other things. Um, Apparently, there is trouble in paradise. And by paradise, I mean meta, which is probably the equivalent of paradise for any ambitious researcher wanting to develop some serious stuff with a wide impact. Now, Llama team is supposedly falling apart due to internal friction over computing power between two different research teams. Talk about a different idea of red teaming, I guess. Um, 14 people from the original team actually left. Among those leaving, also the founders of French AI startup Mistral. We featured it a couple of weeks ago in my rant. They raised billions before having a product. Well, at least this explains the hype around those folks. And also, fresh off the printing press or typing press or whatever, Apple is finally joining in on the LLM hype, trying to develop a smarter, or well, at least smart Siri. That could then perform complex actions. For example, make a GIF out of the last 5 photos and send it to someone. Very useful. Really excited how that one will work out, considering I still can't get it to play the right song that I requested like 80% of the time. God forbid I'm trying to play a non-English song, or even amp up the volume for more than 2 levels. But hey, maybe I'll be creating GIFs and sending them to probably the wrong people, since I don't have a lot of English names in my contact list, in no time. Okay, and now over and going to Google Universe. Namely, after reading the first article that you see on the slide, so the one all above, um, that basically elaborates Google's plans to take back the world, so cruelly taken from them by OpenAI. I decided to go and check out whatever did happen with Google Gemini. So Google's multimodal supermodel, announced in May as the thing that is going to bring ChatGPT down to its knees, or well, it would if ChatGPT had knees, but I guess that's beside the point now. And so I open up the first article, of course, with a very clickbaity title proclaiming to explain to me why Gemini is so much better. Of course, it didn't do so because Gemini still hadn't launched and we still can't even assess if it's better. But it did give me a good laugh. And by a good laugh, I mean a slight mental breakdown and a twitch in my eye when explaining why Gemini could potentially be so much better. I mean, I might make a couple of actual people that deal with technology cringe with my overly simplified tech explanations, but what makes me cringe is things like the quote with the yellow over it. Now, unless what is meant by Google's vast array of proprietary training data, they mean statistical data regarding website visits, clicks, time spent, etc. This couldn't be further away from the truth, or at least the reality that we all in Europe are kind of trying to live in. Just because something is posted on Google and insert name of the application or website does not, and I can't stress this enough, does not make that Google's proprietary data. That is the current law. Heck, you can even read it in Google's terms and conditions. The only competitive advantage based on that they could potentially have is an unlawful one. And the article provocatively ends with this question. So, what will OpenAI do to respond? I don't know, some more illegal things, I guess. And then at the end of the day, I always return to this quote. Yes, the future is here. It's not evenly distributed. And that's because we kind of have rules. Just nobody seems to be paying any or at least enough attention to them. And then sometimes I think that there's nothing more that can surprise me, and I prove myself wrong every single time. And what surprised me lately is this article by The Information. So apparently, stars are signing deals to produce their virtual doppelgangers. And it's not only that, but also the owners of the body scans of stars are doing that of their own accord, on their own initiative, and without asking the actual star. So now you can have your Tom Cruise young, old, or doing nonsense on TikTok, apparently. Not only that, you can also have performers doing their last shows post mortem. But then again, why even have the last show in the first place? And you can also have a video call with Messi. Now, if you've been following my point, the gist of it is that you're, of course, not talking to Messi. But then again, what does that matter for feeding people's delusions? Yeah, sure, let's go. Why not? And I mean, before we even start considering all the careers that will never even develop in the first place, if you can have a doppelganger of Brad Pitt playing your second, third role, why would you give somebody some nobody a shot? I mean, there's been a lot of movies portraying this particular scenario, creating doppelgangers of people, even talking to your ancestors. Do we really need to live through this particular dystopia? Well, I would argue not, but it appears I don't have a lot of support there when I see these apps. And to finish off, bringing us to today's topic, I'm going to be very inappropriate and leave y'all wondering what to do with this one. I took it from the last article from Kashmir Hill. So apparently, all the way back in 2019, while none of us were aware that Clearview AI existed and facial recognition was a thing and the whole merry bunch, a firm called Vuzix was already creating all kinds of augmented reality glasses, and some apparently also featuring Clearview algorithms, which allow you to identify the person, inform you of their name, surname, job title, and even insert a couple of pics just for reference. Now, especially with Google and Facebook coming out with the fact that they had gracefully restrained themselves from putting their versions of the products on the market, and presuming this is not just a cheap marketing trick. this does tell us something about the potential of this technology to be used for malevolent purposes. Yes, helping blind people recognize persons is a wonderful idea. Yes, it would be great to remember people's names at parties, but are these uses worth of the risks of the potential misuses? And if Google and Facebook would answer that question with a no, then maybe we probably all should. And finally, it appears that Clearview didn't actually have a technological breakthrough. If everybody had the technology, no, they only had an ethical one, and so did Vuzix apparently. And that is something we should all ponder over a bit. And I couldn't find, sadly, the full demo that Kashmir described in her article with the pictures popping up and the title, the profession of the person, but I could find this demo of their product, and Peter is going to kindly play the video right now, where you can see Ernest over there playing around with his pair of Vuzix glasses. And he first chooses the facial recognition app, or maybe I should wait till the video starts.
1 second, and should work now.
Perfect. So first he chooses the facial recognition app, which he apparently has on his pair of glasses. And then he kind of plays around with them, showing himself from various angles, and even showing the percentage of certainty that the algorithm has that that is Ernest. I mean, the quality of the glasses is not amazing, as you can see, so I'm slightly or maybe even more concerned when I think about all the actual high quality cameras available out there nowadays. And you can see that the model is also pretty certain that that is in fact Ernest. Now, walking around with that type of glasses, or somebody walking around with that type of glasses and you not being aware of it, yeah, just got to love the tech and the field. And that ends it with my rant. Now we can actually get to some more serious stuff.
Thank you, Tia. That was really great. I'm going to go back to the slide. Interesting times. Facial recognition and even allegedly emotion recognition have been a topic for the last 5 years. We've been following these developments for a while now, from maybe like in the early 2010s up to real concerns in 2016, 17, developing about phrenology or physiognomy, as some may call it. That is really, really interesting. So, but before we dive deeper into that topic, let's start with the news part. So where are we with the deep dive on the news? I'm going
to take over again
call up this one.
Mention this particular article. Why did I decide to mention this one? Well, because I find it very interesting that the authors take a very different stance on bias research. Namely, instead of trying to reduce biases, they tried to amplify them. Well, it kind of also demonstrates where and why this is the problem. However, when playing around with Opinion GPT, it also clearly demonstrates how fine and how thin a line can be between when something is biased or isn't, especially when asking some more innocent questions. Let's put it that way. However, in my general impression is that the model is still predominantly quite positive and, well, politically correct, let's put it that way, because I did ask some more controversial questions, such as asking a person from the Middle East or from conservative political views about LGBTQ plus rights, and I purposefully mentioned LGBTQ plus because I would expect there to be more of a negative stance maybe towards something like that. However, the opinions are still rather constrained. To achieve this, the authors presented their llama-based model that answers questions using a model fine-tuned on text representing each of the selected biases. For this purpose, they selected 11 potential biases, and they allow side-by-side comparison. Um, the biases range from political, geographic, gender, age, and so on and so forth. They derived basically their training data for the instruction tuning corpus from specially created data sets for this particular bias. However, the fact that the models are still predominantly so positive and constrained might demonstrate the problem with creating data sets as opposed to training a model with actual raw data sets that more resemble the actual situation. However, maybe this is the models that we actually want to create as opposed to models that portray our society perfectly, our imperfect society perfectly. Enough with that, and over to large-scale automatic audiobook creation. Now, with this one, I was struggling for a bit whether to put it in the rant or here, but then I decided to give it a bit more space, and it also didn't really fit in my narrative over there. So, again, 2 weeks ago, a couple of people from Microsoft, Google, MIT, Project Gutenberg, and Equal Contribution published a paper presenting their Project Gutenberg Open Audiobook Collection. The project features all the open license, non-copyright protected books from the original Gutenberg project that are now being converted into audiobooks through, you guessed it, the use of AI. Furthermore, the users could also access the features of their particular audiobooks and adjust, for instance, the tone of voice, speed, and emotion. So think of it as kind of make my own audiobook thing. Now, yes, amazing. We can have audiobooks for all those non-protected books that nobody will altruistically create audiobooks for. The quality may not yet be as amazing, but we'll get there. So why am I mad about this? Well, because of course, in the spirit of open research, everything is open source, including code and method for creating this library. This means that the people, at least those skilled enough in coding, can easily recreate the process for basically any other HTML book out there. And thanks to shadow libraries, this is now an easy task for most books in the world today. Once the technology improves slightly more, but even now for those who find this sufficient, because it does still sound like your phone's voice assistant reading a book to you, who will ever care enough to pay for a real audiobook? And I'm afraid what the answer to that question might be. And yes, sure, we can say that this is the price of progress, and many professions will die out anyways, so we might as well get it over with. What I'm upset about is that this is an extremely obvious example of technology that can be misused for rather obvious purposes, and yet again, nobody stopped to think about it once, let alone twice. And I'm afraid if we continue in that pace, the price of progress will get rather high, and it will happen very soon, and we will all have to pay it. But hey, again, maybe it's just my opinion. And now, following my rant section on the reasoning of AI models, I wanted to go check what the latest stance on it is and can recommend these two papers. For anyone in the topic, they will probably not introduce anything revolutionary. The authors basically try to develop further methods to improve reasoning capabilities of LLMs, which are still rather rudimental again. Especially the first paper also seems to achieve this goal quite well with a so-called graph of thoughts approach. Now, why is this approach so much better than all the other ones? Well, because the model looks at more options simultaneously and then, based on the result of those multiple options, can decide the best route. Why is this so much better? Because with the normal chain of thoughts, which you can actually see there on the slide, if you take one wrong turn, you just go along the wrong turn towards the end. Meaning, if there's one faulty node in their reasoning, the whole reasoning result is going to be dependent on that and be therefore faulty. with the graph of thoughts, there's less probability of that happening. On the other hand, for those not that deep in the topic, the papers also feature quite extensive related research sections, elaborating on the more common approaches. But the most important takeaway is the model still cannot reason. Even with complex prompt engineering, the results vary greatly, depending on the task, and are still generally below human performance levels. Don't have the models doing your reasoning for you. If you do that, you might spend more time verifying their conclusions than what it would have took you to reason through the problem yourself in the first place. And over to the last one that I want to mention, unexpected abilities of large language models. Also kind of continuing with the topic of my rant and the whole machine psychology thing. For anyone interested in a solid and quite brief overview of all the unexpected emergent capabilities of LLMs and how these are discovered, as well as what the most common theories of why they emerge in the first place are, again, without treating them as subjects in psychology experiments, I can definitely recommend this article by Stefano Nolfi, a researcher at the Institute of Cognitive Sciences and Technologies in Rome. And yeah, I will end with saying maybe we as humans should try out this whole reasoning thing before we revert into to pseudoscience and machine psychology.
That's absolutely true. And to dive deeper into the topic of reasoning and planning, because people were thinking a couple of weeks ago, or still they still do on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, that like the LLMs might take over, AI will take over, and we're at risk of extinction. And the problem with that is it's not likely. There's a great article by Subarao Hampati, and he says like large language models have gotten immense attention for their near omniscient generation abilities, despite their prowess in idea generation. There are still a lot of doubts regarding their reasoning and planning capabilities. So he used a Wall Street Journal report that we already featured in one of our latest episodes that revealed that GPT-4 outperformed MBA students in generating innovative ideas, leading many to view LLMs as AI complete. However, testing these models on international planning competition domains, including Bloxword, you might remember the game, it showed that GPT-4 achieved just only 30% accuracy. Moreover, when test domains were altered to obfuscate names, GPT-4's performance significantly declined even more, revealing its dependence on memory and pattern recognition rather than autonomous reasoning. So basically, it grabbed the data from the results from the training data. So some methods like fine-tuning and back-prompting have been suggested to enhance LLM's reasoning abilities, but these often only amplify not their reasoning, but their retrieval abilities to grab the data from the neural network, or they depend on human intervention, so that the real planning, the real reasoning is being done by the people who are prompting, or the chain of thought prompting there. Despite these limitations, LLM can still play constructive roles in reasoning tasks by generating potential answers that can be refined by external solvers or human experts. But unfortunately, many research papers asserting LLM's planning abilities often misidentify general planning knowledge extraction as genuine planning. In conclusion, while LLMs possess exceptional idea generation and approximate retrieval abilities, they lack autonomous reasoning and planning capabilities. I quote, "What they do, armed with their web-scale training, is a form of universal approximate retrieval, which, as we have argued, can sometimes be mistaken for reasoning capabilities." That's a very important thing to know. There is a lot of hype going on, and there is Predicta. Predicta is a litigation prediction software. It's an AI system, as they call it, that has been developed and that utilizes judges' biographical information and past decision-making history to anticipate their future rulings. For us as lawyers, that is, in general, interesting, even though it sounds vaguely as if I've heard about it before. I will come to that later. So this innovation aids lawyers and plaintiffs in making informed decisions, as they call it, about which cases to pursue, potentially, of course, revolutionizing their approach to legal strategy. So their CEO, Dan Rabinowitz, a former Department of Justice trial attorney, he told that his AI model can predict how a judge will rule with over 80% accuracy without even considering the facts of the case. That's like shocking, I would say. Predictor says we don't look at the law or the facts. We entirely ignore that. Oh God. That reminds me of an older story about IBM Watson, which was like a total failure. Said in 2016, you can see here, this AI judge correctly predicts case results in 80% of the time. Still, I think in practice it didn't work. And something else, also 2016, predicting judicial decisions of the European Court of Human Rights, European Court, a natural language processing perspective. It was not that optimistic. So the question whether it is just snake oil or pointing out and leveraging existing bias in the judicial system, we will see about that. Definitely interesting. We had watermarking before. We discussed it before here on this show in an article by Claire Leibovitz. The challenges maintaining trust in online content in the age of AI are explored following an incident where you might remember the AI-generated image of the Pentagon catching fire, which allegedly caused chaos and market disruption. The importance of distinguishing real content from synthetic content becomes evident. I think it's over. This distinction is not necessary anymore. We should all assume that everything is synthetic online. So she points out that watermarking has privacy implications because then you have a tracking beacon following you around the web or wherever you go, wherever you use that document, that piece of information. So also Leibovitz points out that while visible watermarking may seem like a reasonable idea, straightforward, its effectiveness is completely uncertain because there's a liar's dividend in that, a situation where skepticism becomes so pronounced that it undermines trust in real content, comes on top of it. So if everything is watermarked, there's a huge dividend for those who do not watermark their content. So in the end, no one will trust anything online. That's like my theory from the beginning. We will see more of that later, but first, let's talk about religion. Silicon Valley's vision for AI is mostly religious, and this article is a very nice opinion piece, and it's worth reading. It says, Silicon Valley's enthusiasm for AI is akin to religion, which parallels centuries-old religious concepts. Tech leaders envision AI as a path to transcending mortality by uploading minds to the cloud. We saw the duels of famous art actors and artists, and achieving perfect knowledge, which is impossible, as we saw before. Neural networks can't store that type of information. So they see AGI as a salvation, and that's a problem. Of course, very funny article, very great to read. And also another funny article, it's about mediocrities when AI does all the heavy mental lifting. So their humorous approach to this topic proposes mediocrities as a fitting name, alluding to a fictional brother of Socrates who thought the path of least resistance in knowledge. Mediocrities, preferring shortcuts, represents the potential pitfalls of LLMs, promoting mediocrity. They have three concerns that I fully share. LLMs, averaging the spectrum of online writing, tend towards mediocrity. Consuming such output could deteriorate writing quality. We see that with model collapse. We will see that with brain collapse, possibly. Reliance on summaries can also stunt intellectual growth. Deep reading, as the author suggests, exercises our cognitive muscles. Reading summaries doesn't. Chatbots also might suggest consensus equates truth, sidelining critical thinking. Hard reading helps us develop the mental maps. Easy to read summaries move us towards mediocrity. we should keep that in mind when asking GPT for please summarize that article. And finally, because it relates to the last episode, the UK Parliament has a committee on culture, media, and sports. And well, they said something very interesting. They said they should abandon the law, like the lawmakers should abandon the copyright exemption rules for generative AI, for AI training, in order to protect UK creative industries, which is like the opposite approach to what they proposed in March. So there is critical thinking ongoing still. And AI's training data is the asbestos in their current architecture. So yeah, it's an interesting development there, and maybe not all is lost. Thea, that's so far for the new section. We should switch to
our
face
deep dive.
recognition.
Right. And for the deep dive, I actually found some interesting use cases, some more interesting use cases other than the Vuzix classes. And I basically started my research with, well, who else but Kashmir Hill. Kashmir's story is a long one, and it's actually culminating today when her book is being published. And I mean, if you still haven't gotten the book that got published today, you can still hype yourself with these 3 really well written articles, and also okay. We can't see it, but it should work on the slides that will be provided. There was also a webinar with Danielle Solov, 1 hour explaining her story. And her story essentially revolves around that of Juan Tontat. Juan Tontat is the guy that grounded, founded, and is leading Clearview AI in various directions that a lot of people think are unacceptable. Listen to it, read the materials, and if you've done that, you are probably going to order the book as well. And yeah, that's probably the main takeaway from this episode today. Anyways, to get back to the point, the key takeaway of well, my whole thinking about this issue returns back to the quote that I featured earlier. So privacy violations and violations thereof are kind of a rich man's game. For instance, Kashmir also talks about an anonymous rich older person who apparently asked a waiter to take a photo of a man that his daughter was having lunch with. In 5 minutes, he sent her his approval because he identified the man based on that particular photo taken by the waiter, and also found a bunch of materials that served to testify that he was indeed a worthy guy for his daughter. And that was all before we even knew that Clearview AI existed. So that is the first thing that we kind of need to deal with when talking about these technologies. And secondly, we need to learn to deal with the fact that AI got a lot better at facial recognition than humans are, and consider the implications of implementing these technologies at scale, and especially for law enforcement purposes. Now, why do I mention this? Well, because there's just a lot of hypocrisy going on in that field. For instance, we had Italy fining Clearview AI astounding 20 million, and then this year this happened. Now, beside from the fact that yes, AI mobsters should be brought to justice, and it's great that they did that. They did that by letting a facial recognition software run through social media. They apparently found a picture of this Italian mobster holding a loaf of bread, which was supposed to, advertise the pizzeria where he was working at in France. And based on that identification of the social media photo, they had their arrest. Again, nothing wrong with catching mobsters per se, nothing wrong with using facial recognition to do that, but you kind of can't fine them 20 million and ban their use and then use them a year later. So a lot going on there, which I personally do not like. And if you also don't like it, then you might want to consider this privacy request form that can be found on Clearview's sites, where you can actually opt out of your photos being included in the datasets, and they should honor it. Now, it doesn't work for Europe because it was banned in most countries in Europe anyways. Which I don't know if that's the problem or the solution, because then theoretically you're still in the data set, but the service as such is not available. Maybe they fixed that bug, but there are various forms that you can send to them, and then, well, maybe they honor at least some of them. And now to go away from Clearview for a second, I also wanted to mention this company, Affectiva Media Analytics. They are currently in a partnership with another company from Denmark, and they do emotion recognition and emotion analysis. They do that for building advertising strategies, and they also do that, for instance, in cars to improve your experience. Now, I took this particular photo for a couple of reasons. First, because it portrays greatly how many people are actually in the car. And even if I, as the person who bought the car, am fully okay with my car scanning my face and adjusting the temperature based on my facial expressions or how tired I look, the other four people might disagree, and you kind of can't really ask every person who is stepping into the car for consent. And what if they don't give it? There are a lot of issues going on with that, and that is probably the less problematic case when it comes to actually building marketing strategies based on data that they based on one interview that Rana Al-Kaloubi did, who is the CEO of Affectiva. They collect their data from users watching Netflix. So now I imagine that all the users consented to their faces being analyzed while they watch Netflix, and then building marketing strategies based on that. Well, I don't know. Well, at least you can have a very good commercial that you really like, and for the product that you really like. But again, a lot of data there, a lot of shaky science there, and that is something that I think people should be aware of. And it's not just Affectiva, just to make that clear. For instance, in a very short time that I devoted to the research, I also found Morphcast. And why did I decide to mention them? Well, because of this. Apparently, there was a touristic promotional video for Naples, so in Italy, made using their again emotion analysis thing, and as you can see in the yellow, systems that operate on the server side, okay, captured facial image frames will be processed solely on the client side and immediately deleted. Okay, sounds great. During the viewing of the animated short film, and based on the viewer's emotional responses, the viewer will then be given recommendations. Now you can imagine, you can imagine my reaction. I was home officing at the day, and I watched the video and I got the recommendations, and I was sitting there in my sweatpants, looking like a regular home office day, and it was slightly frightening, I have to say, to then go and read this. And even if they deleted it straight away, I think that is something that I should have been aware of before the fact happened, and should have consented to. In any event, I am not entirely sure how that works, what type of client access they use to actually access my camera, because the light still wasn't on. Maybe they just tried it and it didn't work. Maybe it works only over certain platforms. I couldn't figure that out. But there are people using it. There are people making promotional videos with it, and that's something that everybody should be aware of. And of course, then I had to also put this screenshot in. I just love the GDPR stamp. It's a very great way of claiming to be compliant with a stamp that does not exist, with a certification that does not exist, but it looks nice. And hey, if
FTC enforceable, by the way.
FTC enforceable.
Yes,
Nice.
misleading.
Maybe we should switch to the US. I mean, I don't even know what is going on here, but in any event, yes, they are fully GDPR compliant, and they have a stamp to prove it, which they designed themselves. And now we can discuss over this for a bit. I also put in 2 articles from the newly incoming AI Act, which is supposed to deal with facial and emotion recognition. But Peter, feel free to drop any comments if you have them.
Sure. I mean, the situation that was developing, or has been developing over the last years, is quite, I would say, interesting here. I can add some more information to what you just said, like the catching mafia guys online. You don't need a picture for that. There was in 2018 there was considerable work by MIT and in this case here University of Oxford also, like seeing voices and hearing faces cross-modal biometric matching. So by leveraging their voice, you could reconstruct faces. Faces was a machine learning model trained on YouTube videos and faces therein. So YouTube seems to be the potential basis for a lot of things. By the way, Gemini heavily relies on YouTube transcripts, they told me. So I'm guessing what that means. Is that good or bad? I mean, I've seen so much crap on YouTube that I really doubt that this could give them a leverage. But what do I know? I know that like already in 2019 there was a huge debate about like AI in the classroom. That was even before the pandemics. There's a great thread on by Frank Pasquale, American law professor. He dedicated a whole thread to this situation where the students were rated according to their behavior. And I mean, there's a lot of talking about China. In the end, it's not just about China. We have in the wild data sets under the domain exposing.ai, you can find a lot of data sets about that were used for facial recognition, face scrub. There are more, of course, on the darknet. If you dare to install an Onion browser, you can find them there. But there is definitely a lot of things going on. There are even high quality, high resolution cameras in public places in most countries. The next thing that we found interesting is that like it's not just the one-to-many facial recognition thing, like where you have police surveilling a square and picking up like maybe trespassers, but the long range facial recognition, which poses significant challenges to algorithms, but also that like they're working on that. So friend-foe recognition is very helpful here. The problem is like facial recognition works quite well if you have enough training data. Maybe for a sniper, it's sufficient to have like 80% certainty whether you're a foe. But that's not enough for consumer products, I guess. It's not enough. And when it comes to emotion detection, it becomes even more creepy. For instance, Frank Pasquale pointed out there was a new paper. One face recognizer consistently interprets black players as angrier than white players, controlling for their degree of smiling. Interesting. There is a whole paper from the Alan Turing Institute about understanding bias in facial recognition technologies that is worth a read. And then we started the discussion in was about 2019, 2018, 2019, when all of these like affective kill this one. And okay, that is like ads going on in the background. You could hear that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know which ad popped up, unfortunately. So But there was a very interesting experiment. Scientists created an online game to show the risk of AI emotion recognition, because it's not working. It's not working. They have a fake smile game, Emojify info. You could turn on your camera and then you could like make facial expressions, and it will recognize them according to the model they trained. And you will see that it's not super cool working. And that's why already like 2 years ago, one of the leading figures in AI research, Kate Crawford, she called for the regulation of the recognition of human emotions. Researchers in this field, they say, okay, overblown claims give our work a bad name, but in the end, I mean, there's generally a lot of doubt whether you could actually at all recognize emotions. The EU is trying to regulate that through the AI Act, but also, of course, like at the root of all of this, by applying restrictions to the data processing in the first place. And then there is, that's from June this year, Ron Wyden, the US state senator, the US senator for the state of Oregon. He's talking about the EU restrictions on the AI emotion detection products. And as we can see, in the US, there are a lot of movements in this field, also new laws, and especially in the HR field. Even though facial recognition currently is a big thing in the US to prevent shoplifting, the US and the UK, as we saw very recently. Yes, so my opinion is facial recognition, unfortunately, can be an effective technology if it works one to many. The camera to many, like millions of people crossing, or like on a square, hundreds of thousands of people. Yes, might be, but emotion recognition is actually crap, doesn't work at all. And anyone selling it should be sued for misleading advertising, unfortunately. Yeah, that's my personal opinion.
I'm not sure to what extent I agree that it's a complete nonsense, but definitely something to be aware of. If you can just put up the slides again for a sec, just so that I mention the two more slides that I had. So these are the rules that are supposed to be enforced by or through the AI Act. So forbidden to create or expand facial recognition databases, and also forbidden to use AI systems to infer emotions in the areas of law enforcement, border management, and workplace and education institutions. Now I want to lag on the whole law enforcement and border management for a thing. There has recently been a judgment, and by recently I literally mean 12 days ago, the judgment was confirmed, the Breyer judgment, where these systems are already widely in use by border management. How they intend to prohibit that now, dubious. Second, again, we already had the mafioso case literally a couple of months ago now. Well, this particular article does say just emotion recognition, but general stance is that real-time facial recognition is also prohibited for law enforcement purposes. Furthermore, we had Clearview AI on the other hand, actually claiming that they will only sell their software to public authorities. So we have two very opposing sides here, one that wants to prevent it especially for law enforcement purposes, and the other that wants to allow it only for all law enforcement purposes. The arguments can be found, of course, on both sides, and it appears that Europe is leaning towards prohibiting it in law enforcement purposes, yet still uses it and has been using it for the past couple of years, and that is definitely one interesting development to see how this plays out. And then, aside from the whole forbidden systems, we also have, of course, the high-risk field regulated by AI Act that says, as you can see on the slide, biometric and biometric-based systems for real-time identification, high-risk, real-time remote biometric identification high risk now in all cases, not just for law enforcement. And putting into service AI systems for analysis of recorded footage, publicly accessible spaces through post-remote biometric, blah, blah, blah. You can read the whole thing yourselves. What I wanted to bring out here is that this only mentions publicly accessible spaces. Again, as I said, in the mafioso case, they scanned the internet, they scanned social networks. Is that a publicly accessible space? Well, not really, but kind of is. Again, a lot of questions that still remain to be clarified, in my opinion.
The reason why researchers, actually the people who know how the stuff works and why it doesn't work, why they are calling for a ban on at least the emotion recognition, is that it doesn't matter whether it works or not. It will be used, and based on the wrong identification of emotions or feelings or whatever they want, facial expressions, categorizing you as a threat when you're trying to cross the border, which could lead into the friend-foe recognition situation with the sniper. That might be a very bad idea to rely on technology. But there is also a movement that tries to help us with that. Yesterday we had a meeting with friends of ours here in Leipzig. They were shooting a commercial about their product, and they're called Urban Privacy. And what they do is they create fashion that helps you to become undetectable by cameras, and it is really cool stuff. Currently, they're, I think, in the funding phase, so bootstrapping money to, and every piece of fashion is individually created. So if you want, have a look and maybe help them with their funding where what matters. That is at least a cool initiative to help you. And I mean, the stuff looks cool too.
But again, makes you wonder if the criminals start wearing the same things, then might be less cool.
It might be less cool.
That is the debate here. How far do we want to allow this, and for what and when?
Yes. In the end, I would that would be my closing remark for today. When a very smart, much smarter person than I am once said, not everything that should be done, not everything that can be done should be done, but people will. And we will have to deal with this type of technology in the future, in our cars, in our homes, and on our streets.
Yeah, and the key takeaway today: we don't have to deal with it in the future. We have to start dealing with it now because it's already everywhere.
Yeah, so our faces are being scraped while we speak.
Yep.
That's true, but also unavoidable at the moment. Cool. For me, that's all for today.
Yeah,
do you
perfect.
have...
Once we've finished it on time, actually.
That's great. Cool. So thank you, Thea.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Always a pleasure.
Have a nice trip to the US and Mexico, and please come back.
I will do my best not to move to some beach in Mexico where there's no algorithm scanning me.
Okay, and no mafia looking
no
for
mafia
you, right?
bosses.
Cool. Thank you all. Thank you for tuning in and surviving the... I still have no idea whether the LinkedIn tag works in the end.
I think it works only if you don't open the stream. It only works if you're watching it as a post. I don't know why, but
it's not working on the app on the phone for me. It doesn't let me in.
We are just talking too many bad things about the tech, and now the tech is failing us.
Yeah,
we deserved it.
They hate us basically, but also cool. Thanks a lot. See you for the next episode, number 7, and we'll keep you updated. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.